From a climate perspective, there's something that makes Denmark stand out. Not a single municipality has signed on to the Climate Emergency Declaration movement in Denmark. In a neighboring country, the United Kingdom, for instance, there's 570 councils that have declared a climate emergency, and they cover 95% of the British population. But in Denmark, not a single council. Why this difference? What's wrong with these Danes? What are they thinking? Is it like everything is fine and we should just continue with business as usual? When I've been talking with Danish mayors and decision makers in my attempt to try and convince them of the benefits and the significance of declaring a climate emergency, the answer I've been getting from them is that they don't see the need to scare anyone. People already get it, they say. Here in our municipality, we're very occupied and concerned about climate change. And people are taking action. They're changing their behaviors. We all are, they say. The Danes have been pioneers when it comes to creating wind energy. That started already back in the 1970s. But it's like here in the last 3-4 years that the story really has changed. And that has happened without any declarations of emergency. It took off, I think, when the summers began to get hotter and the snow disappeared in the winters, and the country had its first so-called climate election 3 years ago, where both the media and the politicians began talking about the climate issue, and in that way paved the way for a collective shift in the thinking. Energy companies announced that they would be closing their coal-fired power plants, and new regulations were put in place to stop the pollution of cars and buses. In with the community gardens, the bicycle lanes, the recycling and sorting the rubbish, climate awareness. Especially Copenhagen has become a very carbon-conscious capital. Actually, it's like buzzing with green inspiration. So I feel it's like if you want to see what a whole of society carbon-conscious future could look like in the rest of the world, this is what the world hopefully one day will begin to look like when the story begins to change. It's openly out there with trucks and buses driving around in the city with these big visible slogans saying, I'm 100% climate friendly, I'm driving electric, I'm carbon neutral. The green buzzwords are visible everywhere in the Copenhagen cityscape. And of course, yes, some of it is greenwashing, sure. But at the City Hall, the aspiration is actually quite sincere. They've been working hard for years on making Copenhagen into one of the world's first carbon-neutral capitals. And from the look of how life rolls out at street level on a summer day in August, really it looks like it's not just the administrators at City Hall, but everyone who are determined to reach that goal of carbon neutrality. It's the people on their bicycles, it's the commuters, the meat-avoiding consumers at the restaurants, the businesses with their signs in the windows, the community as a whole. That's the impression you get, at least on the surface, that the urban Danes have come together around the call for climate safety. They drink tomorrow-friendly coffee and they drink climate-neutral water in bottles produced with 100% recycled plastic or plant-based plastic. They eat vegan, gluten-free, sustainable ice cream. And they work from home when they can, and they jump up on their bicycles and their e-bikes when they're going to work. And the Danes genuinely seem to subscribe to this slogan I saw in a shop where it said, "A richer life doesn't have to cost a fortune." When you come to Copenhagen as a tourist, you're encouraged by the official authorities to use a bicycle or public transport to get around, and to refill and recycle and stop plastic pollution, to buy eco-friendly goods, and to eat local produce. But when the Danes themselves talk about climate and sustainability, they also talk about shaping a world of trust. That was the exact title of a conference I attended, which created a bridge between the threats of cybercrime, war, and climate breakdown by focusing on the overall importance of safety, security, and trust in the business world.
I virkeligheden ender jo også klimaudviklingen, hvis vi ikke får styr på den, et sted, hvor alt bliver mere kaotisk på kloden, med folkevandring og ørkenspredning, vildt vejr, konflikter, der bliver afledt af det.
Og hvem er det, vi skal passe på? Er det os selv? Er det vores firmaer? Er det vores familie? Eller er det det sted, vi bor?
Trust is one of the key elements in the recipe for creating a society where people feel content with their lives, according to those United Nations researchers who create an annual happiness index and who keep placing Denmark up in the top 3 on the global list year after year. It's trust and the fact that the Danes feel safe that makes that happen. That's a precondition, probably, to the Danish story change. The Danes take pride in conducting their business with integrity and responsibility. So when it comes to climate, it's the same. It's about taking responsibility for solving the climate crisis and joining a collective effort. The city of Copenhagen even has a restaurant now which has taken on this core value as its name, Restaurant Ansvar, which means restaurant responsibility. The IPCC has stated that if we want a climate-resilient, sustainable world, it's going to require fundamental changes to how society functions, including changes to underlying values, worldviews, ideologies, social structures, political and economic systems, and power relationships. So that's a discussion we need to have. And when climate activists around the world out there blocking traffic and protesting and writing letters to the politicians and calling on our leaders to declare a climate emergency, what we really should be talking about is how is that going to create those fundamental changes? How is that going to change people's underlying values and worldviews, ideologies, social structures, political and economic systems, and power relationships? How can we reach that state of togetherness around that we need to take climate action, as it's seen in the streets of Copenhagen, where the overall story has completely changed and everyone seems to be now on the same page when it comes to protecting and taking care of the climate? The change we need to see is not going to happen until we find a way to change the story and unite everyone together around the new story. There was a headline in Medium that stated it this way: to survive climate change, our collective mindset must change. So taking that mindset conversation out in the streets and spreading the words in media and social media about what the Danes have been able to do, I don't know, but maybe that could be a first step. Our countries are different, of course, and our cultures are different. In Australia, we have a very powerful fossil fuel industry that has influenced the nation's mindset and the way that laws are made in this country. The Danish government is actually in the process now of putting a real price on carbon. And it doesn't look like that's going to happen here in Australia until we see some kind of a political revolution, a teal revolution maybe, with more integrity in politics. We need to ban donations from industry to political parties here in this country. And we need to establish some sort of an anti-corruption body with teeth so we can stop that flow of dark money that comes from the industry and goes out to private bank accounts in the Cayman Islands. That's those power relationships that the IPCC is talking about we need to change. So while it looks like that the Danes have been able to create that shift in the collective thinking without declaring a climate emergency, it still makes a lot of sense to continue calling for a state climate emergency declaration here in Victoria and for a national climate emergency declaration in Canberra at the federal level, because that is also a way to change the story and to get people to come together around that we need a political shift and we need a collective mind shift. We really need to come together. Real change happens when we unite together.